After the tragic and untimely death of the great actor and seemingly great person Chadwick Boseman, what was the MCU going to do with Black Panther? I mean, Black Panther, the first movie, was wildly successful, and Black Panther was going to be pretty much a staple and central to the next phase of the MCU. So, what was the sequel going to be like? Well, Wakanda Forever has just come out, and I watched it last night, and I'm going to give my review here in a second. But first, please subscribe to this channel so you can get more great content. And if you like epic fantasy, go into the description and click the link and get a free ebook. All right, so let's do it. Welcome back to Great Stories Change the World. This is the YouTube channel where a fantasy science fiction author, me, looks at popular media, movies, TV shows, some books, and talks about them from the avenue of writing, from the perspective of how good is the writing, what's the writing like, and all that sort of stuff. So today we are doing Wakanda Forever. And as many of you have seen or heard me so far, I was a huge comic book nerd. So along with that science fiction fantasy, I love superheroes. I love comic books. I was a little bit more into the DC realm back in the day, but I did know a lot of what was going on and did have some, Marvel comics. And Black Panther was a huge character in the Marvel comics. He was a big part of the Avengers, and they really developed his story over time. He was kind of part of that early, like in the 70s, where they had black characters, right? They're Black Lightning and Black Falcon and all of that sort of stuff. So he was kind of part of that, but they really developed his character and the Wakanda world over time, like they do in comics, where they begin to explore those sort of origins and those worlds. And so there was really a lot of mythology around Black Panther. And as many of you know, a few years ago, like 2018 maybe, the movie came out, Black Panther. A lot of people were looking forward to this movie. I was looking forward to this movie. Like, what were they going to do? How were they going to sort of explore this character, even though they introduced him in, I think, The Winter Soldier or Civil War, whatever it was, but they introduced him earlier. But here in the movie, like, they really did a great job, and it's one of the best Marvel movies in my opinion. I love Black Panther. My kids love Black Panther, the movie and the character and all of that stuff. So here we have the sequel. But as you know, Chadwick Boseman passed away, and so now they're going to have to figure out what are they going to do with Black Panther. So here we have the sequel, long-awaited sequel. Some rumors have been kind of going on out there, and a lot of people kind of figure maybe Shuri is going to be the next Black Panther, all that sort of stuff. But now we have it, and in the trailers you see Namor, and so a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about, you kind of already know. I'm trying not to give some main spoilers for kind of the end of the movie. But a lot of stuff I'm going to talk about is known, and then I'm going to comment on kind of the writing of the movie in general. But the setup is, right, King T'Challa has passed away. And we get all the main characters back. Like, no one is missing other than T'Challa, right? And so all the main characters back. And there's sort of some grief, and they kind of start out with the death and what it was, and what Shuri thinks could have maybe saved him, which was that heart-shaped flower that Killmonger in the first movie had completely destroyed. And so she thinks that maybe could have saved him, but she didn't have access to it, and she's trying to like manufacture it and do like a synthetic version of it in the beginning, like that first scene, and it doesn't work, right? And so basically we get some grief in the beginning, but like a year later, Wakanda is out to the world. Wakanda is now like a major world power, and instead of being secret, and vibranium is a big reason why. And so we get some of this sort of political maneuvering in the beginning about the resources of an African country and all these European countries kind of wanting those resources. So we get some of that play within there, and it's pretty interesting. And so Queen Ramonda, T'Challa's mom, is now the queen. And so she's trying to stave off all this stuff. And in the process of this, of their grieving T'Challa, trying to figure out what they're going to do with all these world powers, there's a new kingdom that has kind of emerged or discovered along the way, because a lot of these world powers see vibranium as like this great resource, and so they're trying to see if there's any vibranium outside of Wakanda. They're looking for it, and they kind of come across these new people, and it's the kingdom of Talokan, right? And the head guy of this underwater kingdom is Namor, right? Although he calls him Namor. That's kind of how they say the name in the movie, and they kind of explain why they do that, sort of a Spanish thing. But all that to say is, we get Namor, and Namor is a huge part of the comics as well. Like, he's been around forever. He's kind of like Marvel's answer or counterpart to Aquaman. He's like king of this underground kingdom, and he's like always in conflict with the surface world because you guys don't respect the oceans, sort of thing. That's kind of who he is in the comics, and we get a little bit more of that in this movie. So Namor comes in and he's flying around, and look, if you're into the comics, this is pretty cool. There's some really cool stuff that they do in the movie, because they put the wings on his feet, on his ankles, and he's got the Spock, the pointy ears, and it's Namor, right? Like, this is a cool character. Another character they bring in from the comic books is Riri Williams, who is Ironheart. She is like the next generation after Iron Man. So Iron Man's dead in the MCU, and so here we have kind of the next iteration of Iron Man, except they don't really call her Ironheart in the movie, but she's coming in there, and she's from the comic books. And so there's some really cool stuff that they're pulling in here, but no one is Black Panther. So there's this conflict now with Talokan and Namor, because Namor is like, look, now that they know about us, they're going to want to get our resources like they do with all these other nations in Africa and Central America and stuff like that. So we're going to just destroy them first. So it's a little sort of cheesy, not really cheesy, but it's a pretty big jump, right? Here he's like, look, they're going to want to get our resources now that they know about us, so we're going to have to strike first. And it's a jump, right, to say we're just have to destroy all the surface world. And he tries to recruit Shuri and Ramonda to kind of partner with him as another powerful nation so they can do it together. And of course, Wakanda's like, no, that's pretty dumb. Like, we're not going to destroy the whole world. We're not going to be part of that. That's not really King T'Challa's legacy. That's not what he would have wanted. That's not what we want. We don't want to go to war with everybody. We don't want to be that sort of world domination power. We just want to protect what we've got and help people and stuff like that, right? So that's sort of the main conflict, is between Namor and Shuri. This sort of thing of like, if you're not going to help me, then we're going to destroy you first. And then that leads to battles and fighting and all of that sort of stuff. So we got all the guys back. We've got Queen Ramonda, already said. We've got the CIA guy, and I'll talk about him here in a second. The Everett Ross is his name, who is Martin Freeman, who is Bilbo and the original Office guy from the UK. And we've got M'Baku, who is like the really big, I don't say gorilla type guy, but he's like that big dude that fought T'Challa there in that first movie. We have Nakia, who is King T'Challa's love interest. She comes back. Okoye really has a large presence in this movie. She's an awesome character, and so I'm glad they really focus a lot on her, and they kind of turn her into more of a superhero. They give her a pretty cool arc throughout the whole movie. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus comes back as the director, this director person from the CIA, and she's been in some of the MCU live action stuff, some of their streaming shows. So there's some connection with the larger MCU, but there's not a ton. And as I was watching it, I was like, there's like this major world-shaking stuff going on, stuff going on in the UN. And it's kind of one of my criticisms. I know why they did it, but it's one of my criticisms where I was like, wouldn't the Avengers have gotten involved at some point? Wouldn't maybe Falcon or somebody, like, wouldn't somebody else have gotten involved? Where's Winter Soldier in all this? Where is Bucky? Like, he like spent time in Wakanda. So this didn't feel like one of the bigger MCU movies for that reason. It wasn't as epic as it could have been, and maybe it's just, I know why they did it. It would have been kind of complicated and a little more convoluted to try to bring in some more characters, because they were really trying to focus on these characters. But at the same time, when you have Winter Soldier, when you have especially Civil War, I mean, a lot of these other movies were bringing in, you know, other characters from the MCU, and that's pretty normal, and it just didn't happen in this one. But I understand why. They wanted to keep it simple. These are nations that want to kind of keep themselves secret. I get why, but at the same time, it felt like, man, if this is a worldwide thing going on, it's a little bit of a plot hole that some of these other characters don't show up, in my opinion. So I was thinking that as I was going through, and then so there's all the fighting, and that's, I'm not going to give away a lot of what's going on, but the main theme that we've got going on here is grief. So from a writing perspective, the main theme that we've got going on is grieving King T'Challa, and Shuri herself is really having a hard time because she does the whole pull away. I'm just going to like be in my work. I'm going to concentrate on my lab stuff, and I'm the scientist and I'm a tech person. And so that's kind of her response to grief. And Nakia, the love interest, she's kind of off in Haiti for some reason, but she's kind of, we find out why later, right? But she's kind of gone off into this whole other country in Haiti, and she's trying to help people. And so she kind of runs a little bit. And Queen Ramonda, right? I mean, she just takes over, sort of to honor her son's legacy and try to manage what he left behind and all that sort of stuff. So you've got some different reactions to grief, and I like that as a writer. As a writer, you're like, not everyone is going to respond to grief the same way. And so I really like that they did that. Thought that was really cool. And even that there was some unhealthy stuff, right? Shuri she doesn't think she can kind of get in touch with her brother through the, you know, ancestor stuff. And it's just some stuff that went on. But also, through the course of the movie, right, grief many times turns to anger, right? You got to have something to blame, somebody to fight. You got to have somebody that you can say, you know, it's your fault, right? And so Shuri really deals with this, like using her grief and her anger as sort of justification for revenge and violence. And as she's sort of dealing with, yes, becoming, you know, the Black Panther, as she's sort of dealing with that arc throughout the whole movie, there's that emotional stuff going on, which I really liked. I really dug it. And man, that actress that played Shuri did an amazing job. I really liked her, and I thought what she did was great. I like the guy who was Namor. He was really cool. I liked a lot of the languages. The music is the same guy from The Mandalorian, I think, but the music was just phenomenal. There's just a lot of stuff. The visuals were great. A couple different criticisms. It gets a little slow towards the middle. You know, Shuri goes and she sort of explores a little bit this underwater kingdom, and I get why they did it, but there was just some moments in the middle where it kind of dragged a little bit, and I was like, you know, we could have shortened some of this. The movie is 2 hours and 41 minutes long, so I get it, right? There's probably a lot of stuff they cut even with that, so it would have been cool at home maybe to see like a long version, but in the theater it was, you know, there's certain pacing you're kind of looking for. And another one of my criticisms is what they did with the CIA guy, Everett Ross. So Martin Freeman is amazing. He did an amazing job, but his storyline really didn't go anywhere. He's just kind of there for story reasons in the beginning, and then stuff happens with him, and then at the end, like he doesn't really have much of an arc. So as a writer, you gotta look at this. You gotta say, okay, I want this person in the story, and he or she is going to serve this purpose, but you got to take him somewhere, man. You got to like finish that out. Give him an arc, just like they did in the first movie, in the original Black Panther, right? He becomes like an ally for them, and he's still an ally for them in this one. But overall, I'm going to say this is a great movie. Is it as good as the first one? A lot of people on Facebook I'm seeing this morning, they're like, it's better than the first one. I don't think it's as good as the first one. I think the tension and the moral questions between T'Challa and Killmonger in the first one were better. It's not that they were better actors or whatever than in the second one. I just thought that tension and that really simple contrast throughout the whole movie was really well done. And I thought it had a lot of great discussion points and really just sort of exploration that they did. And I just think overall, Black Panther, the first one was a little bit of a better movie because they didn't have some of these, like, they finished out people's arcs. They gave people stuff, you know, that of growth and these sort of things. And so also at the end of this one, at the end of Wakanda Forever, there's some like reveals towards the end, and you're like, okay, you know, like it just doesn't come out of nowhere, but does a little bit. It's a little convoluted. I get why, and it's kind of cool, but it's still a little like, eh. And then the other thing is, I really did like the fact that it was a little more female centered. You know, it was pretty cool. Like that they really showed a lot of the leadership of these women, Nakia, Shuri, Ramonda, and Ironheart, and that these were Okoye, like these were the leaders, and they really focused on that. And it made sense because these are the leftovers from the first movie. How would they have dealt with T'Challa's death? How would they have dealt with that? So I like that. I also really liked how they honored Chadwick Boseman. And just, I won't go into all of it, but they did have a couple moments there in the beginning and there towards the end where they really honored him as a person, as an actor, the character Black Panther, because there are a lot of people who loved Black Panther. And like, if you were like me, I was just completely shocked, you know, when we saw that he was dead. It was one of those social media things where you were like, this can't be real, right? This is just a complete joke. But it wasn't. It was really sad. And so overall, I love the movie. I definitely recommend it. I think it could have been about 20 minutes shorter, 5 to 10 minutes shorter at least. Could have really helped the pacing along in some of those scenes, or at least tightened them up a little bit. But overall, it's an amazing movie. You will clap at the end. You will be emotionally invested at the end. Like it's well worth seeing, whether in the theater or later on. Well worth it. It's a great sequel. I thought overall they did an amazing job. A couple hitches here and there, plot points, but I think overall they did a great job. So check it out. Remember, subscribe to my channel right here. Go into the description if you like epic fantasy like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, that sort of thing, and get the free ebook in there. And until next time, peace.